Hello there, welcome back to my channel. My name is Katie, and today we are going to talk about 5 reasons why you should consider adopting from foster care. If you're new to my channel, my name is Katie, and I do videos about lifestyle, faith, adoption, and travel. And adoption videos are by far my most popular videos, and I really think it's because there's just not a lot out there. I know when I was looking into adopting the first time, it was really easy to find those videos that were like the, sappy adoption day, really happy, and I have nothing against them. I mean, it was very common that my husband would find me like crying in front of my computer screen before we started adopting, like watching these videos. Those are good. But there's really not a lot of just like information and facts, especially about foster care adoption. So I'm making this video to help those of you like me who were kind of in this boat of considering foster care adoption and weren't sure what to think or if they should do it. I hope this video helps you. Also, if you don't know, it is Foster Care Awareness Month. So this month I'm making quite a few videos about adoption related topics, especially adopting from foster care, to help those of you who are considering this journey or are just beginning it. I will actually link my adoption playlist above. I have videos about our story adopting, videos about what it's like adopting a toddler, and I did a very recent video about how to adopt from foster care if that's something you're interested in. But today I'm not going to talk about how to adopt from foster care as much as why you should consider adopting from foster care. So number one, there is a huge need for foster adoptive parents in the United States. In 2019, it was reported that at a given time, there are over 400,000 foster children in the US. And out of those 400,000, there are 100,000 or more who are considered waiting children. And if you're not sure what a waiting child is, I'm sure it's kind of obvious, but a waiting child is a child who's waiting to be adopted. Their biological parents have not been able to meet their case plan to get their child back. The foster family will be one of the first choices to adopt that child. However, sometimes the foster family is not able or not willing to do that. So that means these kids are just stuck in the system waiting to be matched with a family who can adopt them. And there's a lot of bureaucracy with foster care and adoption, and so things are kind of slow. And so that, I think, is why there's such a huge number. I don't want you to think that there's a huge number because these kids are all terrible and no one wants to adopt them. That is just not the case. Our daughter was a waiting child, and she was a healthy 18-month-old little girl. And the reason her foster family didn't adopt her is because they were in their 70s and they wanted a better life for her. They wanted her to have parents who were young, who could be around longer, who could do things with her. So they did it out of love for her. It wasn't because she had all these behavior problems and she just was too hard to deal with. Certainly, I'm sure that happens at times, but for the most part, that's not why. Like, let's not blame the kids for why they haven't been adopted. So like I said, there's a huge need. There are 100,000 waiting children just waiting for a family. And so, I don't think you should just choose to adopt because there's a need, because there's a little bit of saviorism in that. But I do think if you're considering different types of adoption, this is a huge need and it's often overlooked. And here's the thing with foster care adoption, there are way more kids waiting in foster care to be adopted than there are families who are willing to adopt them. So you're just gonna get in a situation where there's just kids stuck there. And so there really is a huge need as compared to, for example, domestic infant adoption. There's nothing wrong with doing that. I have friends who have done it. I think it's beautiful. I think there's a need for it. But I will say this. When I was looking up statistics about this, it says that there are about 36 families waiting for every one newborn that is placed for adoption in the United States. So you basically have families clamoring over this one newborn when there are all these kids in foster care, and it just seems like nobody really wants them. And so I just encourage you, if you're really your heart is set on domestic infant adoption, it's not a bad thing. You do not need to feel guilty at all. But I just ask, maybe just keep your mind open to the possibility. Maybe look into it. I don't think it's for everyone, but I think that a lot more people could do it than they think. Like I said, the first reason is that there's a huge need, but I also want to put a little disclaimer on that. Don't adopt just because you want to be some sort of hero or savior, because I'm going to tell you, you're human and you're not going to be a perfect parent, and what these kids don't need is someone who's I'm going to rescue you. They need people who are going to be there for them, who are going to love them, but to love them as their own kids, not to be swooping in as a hero, if that makes sense. The second reason you should consider adopting from foster care is because you don't have to truly foster to adopt. Like I said earlier, there are over 100,000 waiting children in foster care. Now, a lot of times people don't want to do foster to adopt because they're worried about getting their heart broken, worried about taking kids in and having to say goodbye a lot. Now, first of all, I would encourage you, I think getting attached is a good thing, and a lot of foster parents will tell you that getting attached is kind of the point. But I also understand you need to know your limits. You need to know what you're okay with. For example, my husband and I really considered doing foster care and then just seeing if it turned into adoption. But since we have no other children, we thought it would feel really strange to go from being a parent, and then if those kids were removed, we'd be mourning that, but we'd also be mourning we're not parents anymore for a while. And so we decided to go with the adopting from foster care, adopting a waiting child. And I think a lot of people just don't know that that's a possibility. You can adopt a child without really being a foster parent. So like I said, I already made a video about how to do this, but I'll just kind of summarize it very shortly. So like I said, I already made a video about how to adopt a waiting child from foster care, but I will summarize it very shortly here. Basically, you would go through all the classes like a foster parent would, but you're going to get an adoptive/foster license. And what that means is that you can have your home study submitted on cases for kids who are waiting to be adopted. So what would happen is after you're matched with one of those kids, you do have to foster them for 6 months. It's a minimum of 6 months. Usually you may actually be able to finalize the adoption in 7, 8, or 9 months. But it's really great because when they're placed in your home, it's an adoptive placement. It's not like a foster placement where they may have to go back to their birth parents or anything like that. The birth parents' rights have been totally severed at this time. There's no going back on that. And so for all intents and purposes, you are going to adopt this child unless something crazy happens, which is very rare. The third reason, and I think this is a huge one, is that it is either free or extremely affordable to adopt from foster care. For my husband and I, we're in Ohio, and we went with an agency to do this type of adoption, and there was a cost associated with it. Ours was about $5,000. I have heard that that is about the highest it gets to adopt from foster care. When you compare that to adopting internationally or adopting an infant domestically, it's a crazy difference. The average for both of those types of adoption are $20,000 to $40,000 per adoption. Kind of shocking. Meanwhile, if you adopt from foster care, you may pay absolutely nothing, or you may pay something that's much more reasonable amount, like $5,000. When we first looked into adoption, my husband and I were both set on adopting internationally. We had both lived internationally before. My husband grew up internationally. We can speak Spanish, and so we thought it'd be really cool to, adopt a Spanish-speaking child and be able to help them carry on that heritage in their life. But when we looked at the cost of adoption, we both were Christians, and we both said, we really feel like if God wanted us to adopt internationally, he would provide the money. I think he's totally capable of doing that. But we were both kind of like, do we really want to have to raise money for this? Is this really necessary? And when we heard about all the needs for foster care families and adoptive families in our area in Ohio, we were just like, you know what? I don't think God is calling us to that. I think we need to open our hearts up to something else. And then when we realized how completely affordable it was, we were just like, whoa, why wouldn't you do this? Obviously there's a need for international adoption. There's a need for domestic infant adoption. I don't want to come across like I think it's wrong, or I think it's inferior, or I don't think you're helping as much. I just think most people, when they think of adoption, go those routes. They think of adopting an infant, or they think of adopting a kid internationally. And there's a lot of kids here. And if you are someone with a tighter budget like we are, you may not want to spend $40,000 on an adoption, or have to, put that burden on yourself when there's so many kids waiting. And if the fact that adopting from foster care is either free or very affordable doesn't convince you, I think this next part really blew our minds. So the fourth reason that I think you should consider adopting from foster care is that your child will receive government support until they're 18. Like I said, we're in Ohio, but I think this is pretty standard for every single state in the US. So let me explain. There's 3 main categories for that. The first one is they will get Medicaid. So they will have health insurance, and you can double up your insurance on top of that. So like that's what we do. We have my daughter on our family plan through my work, but we also have her Medicaid card. So basically like she's always covered if there's some sort of medical thing going on. The second thing is that if they go to a state school in your state, like if they go to a state school in Ohio, for example, their tuition will be free. And if that isn't motivating, I don't know what is. College is so expensive. And obviously we want to give our daughter other options too. Like we don't want her to feel like she has to go to state school or that she has to go to college at all if that's not the path that she wants to take. But so we will have like additional savings for that. But at the same time, it's kind of like pretty amazing that that is at least a backup option if anything else. And this third one is crazy and blew our minds, and I still don't understand how this is possible, but you get what's called an adoption subsidy. And basically what that is that even after you've adopted your child, the state will provide you with a little like amount of money per month to help you raise that child. And this is totally dependent on your child's situation, their needs, all of that. So I'm sure you know, I'm guessing you know that if you are a foster parent, you get paid per month per child for like taking care of them. And it's really, I know a lot of foster parents will be like, that doesn't help us at all. Like, because I think they're worried that people are going to think they're greedy or that they're doing it for the money. But I mean, our adoption subsidy is way less than what a foster parent would make per month. And it still really helps us. So I'm not going to pretend like it's not helpful at all. We don't make a ton of money. And so like I'm a teacher, so we don't make a ton of money. So to us, a few $100s a month, like it does make a difference. It helps pay for diapers, or it helps cover doing fun things as a family that we might not be able to afford without it. So I really think for us, that was like a huge help that we had that. Obviously, if we had a biological kid, we wouldn't get that and we'd still be fine. But it does help. It gives you a little bit of extra things to do where you can save some of it for your kid's future. I know some adoptive families save up the whole thing and like give it to their kids when they graduate from high school. You can kind of decide what you want to do. For us, at least at this point, it kind of helps pay for like activities that she'll want to do in the future and going on little trips with her and like stuff like that. Some families use it and take all their kids to Disney World, you know, like it's up to you, but it is really helpful, especially like I said, if you're like us and your salary isn't like crazy big and you live on a pretty good budget, it does make a big difference. And so I say that while saying like, that's not why we adopted, but the reason they do this is because that is how much it helps them to have that kid not in foster care. Like they're willing to pay you after the child is adopted because it costs so much less for them to be adopted than it does for them to be in foster care. And they need to like incentivize people to adopt because there's so few people willing to do it. So I'll just say this, I don't feel guilty that we get that money. We use it to help our kid. And I don't think we should discredit it and throw it off like it's nothing because it does help. Like, I don't know why people are like, oh, we spend so much more than that on our kid. Well, obviously it costs more than $300 or $200 or $150 a month to raise a kid. But at the same time, like, it's still helpful. All right, and my fifth and last reason for why you should consider adopting from foster care is that you can probably handle more than you think. If you've made it to the end of this video, you must be a little bit interested in this type of adoption. And I know what keeps a lot of people from doing it is fear. They're afraid that they're gonna adopt a kid who's gonna have a bunch of problems and it's just gonna like wreak havoc on their lives and disrupt their peaceful little bubble. But you know what? That's just parenthood in general. Yes, you could get a kid with a lot of trauma. There could be issues that are there, but you also do have a say in what kids you say yes to and what kids you say no to. And I know that sounds terrible, but like you have to be aware of what you can handle. Like I've said this in another video, but it's not fair to a kid for you to say yes to being their parent if you don't feel like equipped or that you're able to care for them. So don't say yes to every single kid. Maybe you need to say, I don't feel like I can handle this type of situation, but I could handle this type of situation. When you go to adopt from foster care or any adoption, they give you this huge checklist. It's like 4 or 5 pages long, and you have to check all the different things you'd be okay with and all the different things you would not be okay with. And it's one of the most painful things to fill out because you feel so guilty. But here's the thing, if you say you're going to take any sort of kid with any sort of problem, any sort of history, guess what? You're gonna get matched with a kid who has some pretty serious issues, because obviously, you know, they're looking to place these kids. These kids deserve a home and need a home too. But if you're honest when you fill that out, you're most likely not going to be placed with a kid who has conditions or a history or situations that you're just incapable of handling. I don't think we're all capable of handling the same things. Like I said, if you had a biological kid, it'd be different, but it's a little different, because when you have a biological kid, there's like a low chance that they're going to be born with a lot of different issues or things like that, and they're not going to have all the trauma that they would have coming from foster care. But if you say on that list, yeah, we'll take everything, guess what you're going to be placed with? You're going to be placed with kids who have really severe needs. And so please don't feel guilty saying we can't handle this. Like, you are still going to be making a difference even if you take on a healthy little kid. Like, you're still making a difference. However, I would say try to research about different things about kids, about what it's like to adopt an older kid, what it's like to adopt a kid with a special need, what it's like to adopt a kid with a difficult past. See if it's something you could handle and be open to it, but don't be like afraid of what could happen. Because honestly, we have had difficulties with our daughter, but we adopted her she was 18 months old when she moved in. She was a healthy little girl and we adopted her from foster care. And we were open to adopting a kid up to the age of 10. And we got placed with an 18-month-old. So it is possible to be matched with a pretty quote-unquote typical kid from foster care. And you can probably handle it. You can probably handle a lot more than you think. I have a lot of friends who tell me, I couldn't do what you're doing. And I'm like, honestly, I look at you with your biological kids and I think you're a better parent than me. And you think you can't do what I'm doing. You know what I mean? I think from the outside to people, it looks like, oh, if you're adopting, you're just like such a saint and such a martyr. And that's not what it is. Like, we're just parents. We fail. We get upset at our kids sometimes. We don't always make the best choices. It's not like some saint or martyr status to be an adoptive parent, and people will put you on that pedestal and you'll just have to be like, no, actually, I wish I could learn from you about how you interact with your kids because you're better than I am, you know? And so I think that that is just something to remember. You are probably more capable of being an adoptive parent than you realize. So there you have it. Those are my 5 reasons why you should consider adopting from foster care. And if you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, could you please give it a thumbs up? It really helps my videos get out there to more people. And my goal is that by people watching my videos, more families will rise up and say yes to adopting from foster care and yes to adopting in general. But my heart is really in foster care adoption because of our daughter and our experience. And so I hope that this encourages you. Also, please let me know down in the comments, are there any questions you have about foster care adoption, about our experience, about just general questions? I have a lot of adoption content planned for upcoming months, but I love making videos specifically about things that viewers want to know. I know how hard it is to find videos about foster care adoption on YouTube, believe me. I could never find anything, and I really like researching and watching stuff on YouTube, so I feel you if you're having a hard time finding stuff. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this helpful, and I hope that you have an awesome day.